You're gonna risk your job, everything you work for. I don't want you getting tangled up in this. I don't know if I'll follow the rules.
You know you can't get rid of me that easily.
Come on, seriously.
If the roles were reversed, would you risk it for me?
This is off the record. That means you don't talk about it.
You think he's really gonna show?
He'll show.
Well, hello, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. We have a special guest today, director, writer, and producer who currently serves as the creator of the hottest crime-based series in Christendom called Vindication. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out on something special. It's a 10-episode season that can be seen on Amazon Prime, PureFlix, or Redeem TV. Vindication is now in the process of completing season 2 of filming. This crime drama seems to run along the same line as NCIS, Blue Bloods, Law and Order, but it really doesn't. It's a story about everyday people who deal with life's everyday problems, who turn to scripture for insight, which makes for compelling viewing. It's less about police work and more about the work of Christ. Our guest today has also directed and produced My Son, 2013, We Get There, 2011, and a short film called Morning Rift, which starred Venus Monique, who also stars as Detective Chris Tanner in Vindication. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, please welcome the very talented director and creator of Vindication, Jarod O'Flaherty. What's up, Jarod? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. I think you need a little button that adds some applause right there, right? For all your guests where you put that in. So, but yeah, man, glad we get to do this.
Man, I tell you, I appreciate you being on, Jarod. We were just talking before we came on live. I know you are a swamp, dude, with a lot of stuff going on. I'm a stand-up comic. I haven't been out in a while, and I'm kind of relieved. I kind of know what it's like when you're running and you're writing and you're running and you're writing, you know, and all that stuff. So I appreciate you being on. Just want to fast forward a little bit, Jarod, before we dive in. You did an episode, I think it was episode 2 of the show, and you had Macy McLean, the actress in this particular episode, and it focused on social media, cell phone use or misuse amongst Generation Z. And you mentioned that this episode had been turned down at a few film festivals because of one particular scene. I was actually surprised to hear that because I thought it was handled perfectly well. I mean, I thought it was a great episode, and I just thought you hit all the right buttons without, you know, going farther than needed, in my particular opinion. Can you talk to us a little bit about that episode?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, it was our second episode, and at the time we didn't know that we would be doing a series. So, you know, to me, it was actually Vindication 2. And at that point, and even now, I go into every project thinking, treat this like this may be the last piece of filmmaking work I ever do. So that way I'm going to put everything I can into it. And here I had this opportunity to do a second Vindication. And so I thought, you know, what a great opportunity to, you know, share a story based on my own personal testimony. So there are a lot of elements in that mirror or reflect the same circumstances that brought me to Christ as a teenager. So that was kind of the groundwork of telling this story. And of course, it was updated. I was a teenager in the 90s. So it was updated, you know, to current times with what you mentioned with the cell phone usage and texting and some of the problems that teenagers can get themselves into with that. Yeah. So that was kind of the framework of the story we wanted to tell, you know, and then we just went out and did that. And, you know, our first episode got into a festival, a well-known festival, very, very conservative though, and it won the top short film there. And I thought, wow, that's really neat, because even episode 1 deals with some issues of adultery and things of that nature that were kind of on the edge. Would a family-friendly conservative festival let it in? So the next year we submitted episode 2, and very understandable to me, but they kind of came back and said, we feel like this one maybe goes just a little across that line for our family friendly content and audience. So, we love what you're doing, but it probably doesn't fit in this year. And I was okay with that. I want to be telling stories that, are safe and behind the line sometimes, and maybe a few times they're a little bit over. Because if you're always over the line, you're probably doing something you shouldn't. And if you're already always on the safe side of the line, you're probably not being honest enough in your storytelling. So it's kind of where I like to be, right there in the middle of the road. Obviously, I think there's a further line that we don't ever cross. We don't want to get there. But, I took it as a compliment that we are telling stories that are hard hitting and aren't just, the easy softball tosses that are safe for everyone.
Well, I had Christopher Sean Shaw on the show about 2 months ago, who's also a director. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting Christopher, but he is someone that kind of shared something with me that kind of describes what happened in the judgment call on episode 2, because everybody has like their own line, in Christendom of what's okay and what's not okay. And, they have all these different lines, but to me, there's a main line. And I think that that's what I love about your show, Vindication. You're not afraid to address heavy subject matter and topics that everybody's dealing with in life. And, we as believers in Christ with the light have to be willing to meet people where they are. And navigating through that without crossing that quote unquote line is a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. I get it. I totally get it, but it can be done. You are successfully doing it. And one of the other episodes dealt with predatory behavior. And I thought that scene, and it's called, reverse trafficking, but it's something that's really happening in our society. And what was it like putting that episode together? I guess that was episode 6.
Yeah. We get the script ahead of time. Obviously we get that and we're looking at it and you're wondering, hey, is there going to be anything here that might be across that line that could cause us problems later on? And, obviously the scenes with the older gentleman where he's interacting with a very young, probably preteen or early teens person.
Yeah.
I mean, that just dripped with creepiness, but I didn't think that there was anything there that parents don't have those conversations with their kid and say, hey, if somebody pulls up next to you in a pickup, wants you to get in their car, you don't get in. So it was nothing there that parents don't discuss with their kids. There was a scene later on where he was interacting with someone who was caught up in trafficking or whatever you would say. And that scene had me worried a lot, and there's still some lines and moments in there that I go, well, I'm glad that people understand what we're doing here and don't think that that was over the line. But, it's just one of those things that, can I sit down with my wife or with my teenage daughters and watch this and not feel, the sweat beads forming on the forehead that maybe I shouldn't have done this. So, you just go in and sometimes you don't know, you put something out there and then you get the feedback that, oh, people didn't like this. I had a fellow filmmaker, a friend I've been conversing with, and he did a very, very good film. And there was some yoga stuff in it, and he didn't think anything of it. Well, apparently the spiritual or whatever side of yoga really causes some issues for some people. So he got a lot of flack and feedback on something that he didn't, imagine would cause issues. So sometimes you put it out there and see what happens.
Well, and that's what you have to do. I mean, as creators, as artists, we love pushing boundaries. I was on my way to a comedy show with my whole family and had all my kids in the car, and I was bouncing jokes off the family, getting their opinion. And my oldest son said, Dad, I wouldn't tell that one. And I said, okay, note to self. I get to the show. Jarod, I'm killing. Flash bulbs are going up, everything, man. And I had this joke, and I said, you know what? I'm going to tell it anyway. And if they don't like it, they're loving me so much, they'll forgive me. So I pulled the trigger, and Jarod, it fell right off the table. I mean, I went from here to the bottom in one fell swoop. And so, and it was a Christian gathering, but I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought it was pretty relative, but true to my son's warning, I guess it wasn't for them. So I get it. I get it. It can be difficult. It can be
Yeah,
difficult.
we have a team of people that will read through the scripts ahead of time, and I think, like you mentioned with your previous guest, of there being different lines for different people,
Hey,
we
Steve.
let a handful of people read over the scripts ahead of time, some with different lines at different places, and usually come to a consensus of, all right, we're going to leave that line out, we're going to change that a little bit,
Hey, Peggy.
just to make sure it fits for everyone.
Yes. So that's Steve Mokate and Steve. Peggy Schott just chimed in. Peggy does a great job as Detective Travis's wife on the show. She and Todd carry the show very well, and I had the pleasure of having Steve Mokate on the show, who plays Sergeant Bill Tomlinson, on the show a few weeks ago. I was going to ask you, Jarod, did you receive any kind of backlash in general from the Christian community for the show in general?
No, the show's been out there for over a year and a half now. Is
Okay.
that right? Yeah, I guess so. A year and 4 months, something like that. And as best as I can recall, I can only think of 2 times that I got any negative feedback from the Christian community on content. One of them was this week, and then another one was probably 6 to 8 months ago, which has been surprising to me. I thought there would be more than that,
Yeah.
So really, it hasn't happened yet. Now, maybe that's because not enough people have seen it. So hopefully more people will see it, and if we start getting some feedback, then we'll know, okay, well, at least more people are watching it. So, but yeah, not a whole lot. One of them, the recent one, was that we mentioned a United States political party in one of the episodes, and they thought that meant it was making a political statement. Okay. And then another one was in episode 9, when it talks about a specific dark web service. Someone asked me, does that exist? And I said, I don't think so. And they're kind of like, well, why would you create that to plant that seed in other people's minds to actually do something like that? And it was, I understand where they're coming from and their feedback and all that. So it is what it is. But other than that, I haven't really heard a lot of negative feedback on content or topics or subject matter.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I think it's just what the faith-based world needs in entertainment, is just, hard-hitting subject matter that doesn't cross the line, but it does point the way to light so people can understand, hey, look, there's a way, there's a better way. And, like I said, NCIS, Blue Bloods, those shows are good, but they don't give you that at all. So I love it. And can you give us a brief synopsis on the journey of Vindication, because I find it quite interesting. You said you started out as just a standalone short, and then, man, bam, it dwarfs into what it is. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, you said brief, so I'll try to give you the 1 minute version of it, so people stay tuned in.
Okay.
But yeah, so we set out to create a short film, just a single, call it an episode. It was just a short film, and it was titled Vindication.
Yes.
And we created it, let it do a festival circuit for about a year. We were about to put it on YouTube, and then a distributor came to us and said, hey, let us distribute this. We'll try to get on some streaming services, sell some DVDs, just see what happens with it. So I thought, that's a better idea than just throwing it out on YouTube. And from the response that they got in the marketplace, they came back and said, hey, what do you think about doing a second one of these? People want to see more episodes. And for me, I thought, well, that's crazy. It's just a single story. It was all wrapped up at the end of episode 1. And they're like, no, what about the detective? Does he do other cases? So, okay. So that's what created Vindication 2. I mean, I even have marketing materials out there that say Vindication 2. And if you want to know a funny tidbit, in the background of one of those scenes, Venus Monique, who had not yet been cast in the show, was helping out with background and showed up in the background of a scene, but we told her to keep her face away from the camera just in case we ever got more opportunities. So she is actually hidden in episode 2 in a few spots. So anyway, we got to episode 2, and it just kind of started like the snowball effect. Then we came back and said, hey, let's do 3 and 4 episodes, or episodes 3 and 4. And okay. And then next time, okay, let's do another episode 5. And as the funding came in, we were able to kind of keep this going. And once you get to episode 3 and 4, we kind of get this idea, hey, this thing may continue into a series. So we start putting in more storylines and characters and backstories and those things, as opposed to just the crime of the week. But yeah, that's kind of how it grew. And then we finished 1 season, and okay, Vindication's done. I'm stepping away. I'm going to go do some other things with the rest of my life. And here we are doing a season 2. So.
Well, thank God for you, man. And you really put together a great cast, Jarod. I mean, I love the actors in Vindication, starting with Todd Terry as Detective Gary Travis. He carries the show very well, and then you surrounded him with great talent and Peggy Schott and Venus Monique, Steve Mokate, and I can go on and on. There are so many other good actors around him. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were able to assemble the core cast of the show?
Yeah, the way that happened, I think, shows that there is some divine guidance and inspiration behind this series coming together. Todd Terry, I met at a Christian film event. He was there as a guest speaker, and I kind of approached him and said, "Hey, I got this idea for a show. You know, what would it ever take for you to consider working with an amateur filmmaker, local that's just trying to put something together?" And he was open to it, said he'd like to see the script, and he never auditioned. We just said, "Okay, if you're willing to work with us, let's do it." And look how awesome he is. And that was quite nice how that worked out for us. Of, oh wow, this guy is incredible. Similar with Peggy Schott, I was at a film festival for Vindication. She was on an actors panel there. And afterwards, I approached her and chatted with her and just made an introduction. And I don't think she had seen Vindication at the festival, so she didn't even really know what it was about. Yeah. But I met her and thought, man, if we ever had an opportunity to introduce a spouse for our main detective, this lady would be terrific for it. And sure enough, as opportunities came up later on, it worked out. I did have her film an audition tape, but she was the only person that I asked for one. I just had to make sure, hey, does this work? It did. It was great. And similar story with Venus at a film festival. She was hosting the festival. I went up to her and said, hey, if we get some more episodes of this Vindication thing, I'm going to find a spot for you. And she kind of, oh, thank you. That's very nice. And it came about. And I too had her film an audition tape. She was the only person that auditioned for it. It looked great. And that's how those cast members came together.
Pretty impressive, Jarod. Pretty impressive, and God was clearly behind all of that. I got it. Here's one of my key questions now coming up for you, because my favorite episode is episode 5. Okay, I love the entire show, but man, episode 5 really does it for me, dude. And it's and I got to get your response to this, because there's a coin flip involved. And to me, I looked at it maybe for the 7th time, and my wife said, are we going to watch this again? I said, yeah, one more time. So the coin flip to me kind of symbolizes Vindication, because you think things are going this way because of the way we are as human beings. We assume a lot of stuff without knowing all the facts, but it's really going that way. And I felt like the coin flip episode kind of pretty much in a nutshell puts Vindication in your, it's like, this is Vindication. Am I right or wrong about that? I'd love to hear your response to it.
Well, I love you going, so overboard on the first episode and first script that I did not write. So that was actually written by another guy, Alan Tregoning, and maybe he could answer some of that. Now, when you say coin flip, are you talking, the actual physical coin flip that you see at the end of the episode, or the fact that throughout the storyline there's a moment where things flip and you go, oh wow, I thought I was looking at this, and in fact it's the opposite side? So are you talking symbolic, or are you talking the physical act that happened at the end of the episode?
Well, the physical act was like the cherry on top, but it was, the whole episode was kind of that way. But then there are other episodes that kind of, also reflect that, like in the episode prior to, in episode 4, you think this one guy's this like, oh man, this guy's like, oh my gosh, he's out there, but he's really not out there for real. My flesh is judging him without knowing him. And then I start feeling guilty as the show continues on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it wasn't anything like, this guy is not anything like I thought he was. And so there's some other episodes here and there that kind of reflect, a coin flip kind of thing. We think it's this, but it's actually that. So that's why I was asking that question, like, wow, okay, is this what vindication does? And you're and then Jarod, you're telling me, well, you did not write episode 5. So
Yeah, well, Alan and I had lots of conversation about it, and we both agreed. We thought that episode was the most airtight as far as how the storytelling went, and I think that's what you're getting at. That as far as what vindication as a word, and by definition, what it means, that episode really captures that, because in the story, we just start stacking the evidence against this guy, and just
exactly.
think, oh, well, maybe that's not the case. Then something else comes out, oh, he's been hanging out with a known drug dealer, he's been sneaking it. And we push it right to the very end where you go, every single thing possible shows this guy is guilty. And then when the shutters are lifted, when the door is open, which actually happens, the door is opened and you see, suddenly there is vindication for him that all of these things that were pointing one direction aren't actually the case. And then he also gets an opportunity to explain himself and say, hey, here's actually what's going on, And there's, there's also another storyline going on with the wife and trying to surprise her husband with a gift. And she's trying to keep it a secret,
Right.
And then the doors get blown off of that. And she goes, you were thinking one thing, you were suspecting this other person of having stolen something.
Yes.
And you got it all wrong. Here's what was actually going on. So yeah, that episode is really, I think, airtight in capturing what vindication means.
Yes. And Candace, you're right. We're going to try not to tell too much, but I tell you right now, I love your explanation of that. And Gary Travis, that scene, Jarod, was so awesome. I don't know, man. I thought it was absolutely amazing. Now, there's another young actor in this show, and correct me if I think his name is Jordan Elsass. And Jordan plays his performance, I thought, was quite compelling in episode 8. That was the only time he's there in the season, but I was quite impressed with Jordan. How did you end up casting him for this role?
So the same film festival that I met Peggy Schott at for the first time, he was there as well for a film that was going on. And I got to see him. I don't think I introduced myself, but his name kind of registered. And he actually auditioned for the boyfriend in episode 2. Did a great performance. He was one of our top 2. We didn't cast him in that because we thought there was a substantial age difference between Macy and between him at the time. I want to say it was something like 8 years.
Oh, and wow.
For us to try to put them on screen as high school boyfriend, girlfriend, we just didn't think that was going to work. So it wasn't about performance. It was just, age difference. But again, we kept him in mind. So when episode 8 came about and we started writing it, that's the episode that has Skeeta Jenkins. It's got April Hartman. It's got a lot of other people in there. Most all of them were people who had auditioned for previous episodes. And I thought, this person is phenomenal.
Okay.
And we've got to get them in the series. So as I started writing this script, I made sure it was one that had a lot of characters in it so that we would have opportunities to hopefully get a lot of these talented people in. And Jordan very much, his character is pivotal in that episode.
It is.
Not a spoiler, it's pivotal. And we knew he could handle it. And, that scene at the end, though, where he kind of has to lose it a little bit, I thought he just did a great job on it. And it was one going to set I was worried about, if he misses this, it could kind of wreck the whole episode. But instead he hit it. It was fabulous and helped it be a very successful episode.
Yes. And it's interesting because the actor you went with in that particular episode that you didn't think Jordan would be quite a fit for based on his age was Todd Terry's son. Gosh, his name escapes me, but he did a great job. Austin Terry, that's it. He did a great job as the boyfriend. He did matter of fact, it was a phenomenal job that he did. And I wasn't aware that Jordan had actually also auditioned for that role. So, wow, amazing. You got a lot of talent in this show. I can see why Vindication is so successful.
So the funny story about Austin Terry in episode 2 is that there's one scene there where another boy in the hall comes up and starts talking with Macy and kind of gets in between her and her boyfriend, Macy's character.
Okay.
And I asked Todd, he's like, hey, I got a son. He's really good. Can I have him audition? I'm like, okay, well, here, I'll send you and let you audition for this, one scene, couple of lines in the hallway for your son. Cause I'm just like, I don't want our main actor's son to be in our, that looks like backyard filmmaking, right? Okay, your whole family can be, I didn't want to. And he said, okay, well, will you also send me the audition sides for the main character as well? And in my mind, I'm going, well, he's not going to get it because I'm not going to have father and son be the main character, but I sent it anyway. Well, guess what Todd sends back to me? He didn't even have his son read the audition for the small role. He only sends back to me the audition for the main role. And then we get it and we're like, oh man, this is really good. And like I said, Jordan was the other one, but there was like an 8-year age difference. And for Austin and Macy, it was closer to 3 or 4 years. So it was, okay, this is good. I guess we'll go with this. And if you were to look back at my prayer request list prior to filming episode 2, it was, what are we going to get out of Austin? Because his IMDb profile was very small. I think he was still in high school at the time, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. Where Macy's very accomplished, has done a lot of bigger things, and man, those two just paired up, and it was incredible. And Austin has gone on to do some bigger things since then as well, and very, very talented guy.
Oh, he did an excellent job. Excellent job. I know Todd Terry's position though, because my son is a 22-year-old stand-up. So, my wife is like, oh, you're going to make sure he gets some spots in certain shows. So you got to make it happen, so, but no, listen, Todd's son did a great job. He was well deserving of that role. Obviously you decided to go with him once you saw his audition. So, and he did a great job. Let me ask you something, Jarod, about faith-based filmmaking in general. Do you think secular audiences are starting to become more attracted nowadays to faith-based films?
If I were to be honest, I would say no. I don't think so.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet. I think that Christians are waking up more to it, though, and that they're supporting it and they're getting out and seeing it. And I say, secular audiences, maybe people on the fringe, the Easter and Christmas morning church crowds, I think maybe they're waking up to it more. But by and large, the attention that is shown to the secular programs out there so far outweighs, what's going on in the faith market. I don't know that gap has been bridged just yet. That's my observation.
I love it. I love your transparency and honesty. I was hoping for a better answer, but I'm only kidding. I'm really trying to understand it myself. Is it getting better, or more secular eyes starting to have more respect for faith-based films? It's just making me wonder. I know your show's really good, and then there's The Chosen, which is out right now, which is a completely different, approach as far as the time. It's during the times of Jesus, but it's done quite well by Dallas Jenkins. Have you seen that series by any chance?
So I've got the Blu-ray of it sitting on my shelf. I have watched maybe 5 or 6 minutes of the first episode a couple of years back.
Okay.
But I've got the Blu-ray and it's sitting there. I have not watched it yet. I want to, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping that the same weekend that I sit down and binge watch The Chosen is the same weekend that Dallas sits down and binge watches Vindication. So, so I'm just kind of saving it so that we can link up and we can do that on the same weekend. But I have two buddies that are producers on that show, good friends, and they're big supporters of Vindication, not just in word, but in action,
Okay.
and it's obvious that what they're doing out there with that show is amazing and unprecedented and all of that. So I've got it and I'm looking forward to it. It's just, I'm waiting for that perfect timing to drop for me to sit down and watch.
You got to check. You're going to love it. And the time period is the only difference in what they're dealing with, subject matter, so forth, but it's so well done. I don't think I've ever seen Jesus portrayed in such a way as Jonathan Rumi portrays Jesus, and just the way that they were able to generate the funding for the project, $10 million through GoFundMe. And it's so difficult, speaking of faith-based films, to generate the money to actually put out a solid product. it's very difficult. What would you like to see improved in faith-based filmmaking, if it were a call that you would make in your judgment that would make it better?
I would love to see faith-based filmmaking move away from the reliance on based on a true story. If you look at some of the most successful faith films that didn't come out of Sherwood and the Kendrick brothers, they're always based on a true story. I don't have to go through and name them all, but that's kind of what's out there, And while there's certainly a place for them, I'm ready to see some of the faith films go with new characters and new stories and things of that nature, getting away from the based on a true story of, okay, whose story can we tell now? And I think is going to happen. But that's what I want to see. Cause you know what, whenever I watch stuff the rest of the time, how many of them are based on a true story? Very, very few. Our entertainment, we love these new stories, but the faith market seems to have a reliance on, let's keep telling stories of true people and real people and that sort of thing. So anyway, that would be mine. That's what I want to see happen.
So you're saying you'd like to see more creativity with the faith-based filmmaking, which makes sense. I can understand it. You can take a piece of the truth, Jarod, without being literal to what actually happened and make it something else. Create another idea out of it. Go down another street when it went that way, but go this way with it, and you'd probably get a heck of a lot more out of that. Interesting analogy. I love it. Have you ever thought about getting vindication on a secular platform, like or has it even been mentioned, like an NBC or ABC, some of the major channels?
Really, that interest doesn't develop on our side, it develops on their side. And until those major networks are saying, wow, there's a big audience out here for the faith-based entertainment, we need to do something, and they start looking, because everybody wants to get all their shows on primetime television and Netflix and Hulu and all that kind of stuff. It's usually when on that side of the fence they finally look and say, there are a lot of people out there that don't particularly enjoy all their entertainment coming from New York and Los Angeles, because some of the worldview in those areas doesn't match up with a lot of the worldview in the rest of the country. And to open that door and say, we're going to put some programs out there that suit this big audience that's being underserved, until that happens, it really depends on them. It's not a matter of us wanting to get it there.
Got it. Yeah, I was just wondering about it because, like I said, it's so similar to me to some of the top crime series that are on the major networks, like USA, A&E, and on down the line, and ABC, of course. It's just every bit as good as any of those shows is going to like, though. Whereas NCIS, I love NCIS, and when it's over, I want to go jump off a building. It's not good. Anyway, I'm just kidding, Jarod. But no, I love it. You're pointing towards the light, and now you've got the series going on. You're a faith-based director, and you're doing the right thing. You're working for Christ, Jarod. How did you come to salvation in Christ?
Well, that's my favorite question to answer and favorite story to tell, man. So we could do 30 minutes on that, but I'm not going to. So as a teenager, as a 16-year-old, around 16 years old, I was reached a spot where things weren't going very well for me. Kind of a low spot. I had been in my first and only long-term relationship as a teenager. And, certainly that 16 years old is a coming of age period in life. You're getting your car, your first job, money, had this relationship and everything. And a lot of those just kind of vanished in a short period of time and put me in a low spot. And in that low spot, by, I think, God's divine hand, he put me in a situation where someone shared the gospel with me. And after that night, I took some time to pray. I felt God speak to me, probably the clearest moment of my whole life, and told me I needed to go to that other person from the relationship, ask them for forgiveness. And I did it the next day, which was completely out of character at the time. And from 10 minutes before I did that act of obedience of asking for forgiveness to 10 minutes after, I was a completely different person. And it changed the trajectory of my whole life to where I'm now a Christian faith-based filmmaker, whatever that means. But, it was that moment that changed everything. And I seeing that God told me to do something, I did it, and then he followed through on his side of the healing that happened afterwards, then that was enough for me. And I said, okay, the rest of my life is following you and what you have to say.
Amen. Amen. I love it, brother. I love it. Candy Staley Smith asks, do you feel that true Christian actors connect with the audience in a different way than a secular actor can?
Ooh. Wow, I don't know about connecting with the audience, because it depends who their audience is. If it's a Christian audience or a secular audience, which one are they going to connect more with and understand with? I certainly think that Christian actors, in portraying Christians on the screen, can connect more with their character and what their character's going through, what they're trying to convey, and that sort of thing. Having someone who's not a believer play a deeply, deep Christian role, I wonder how authentic that would come across when they're playing something that they themselves don't particularly ascribe to or understand.
Amen. Good answer. Trivia for Vindy's. Actress Stephanie Parker briefly appears in an outdoor party scene in season 1 in uncredited non-speaking role. Thanks, Kevin. Interesting trivia there. Stephanie, I would say that's Stephanie Jaxt Parker, I'm guessing.
Yes, that's very much true. It was we were, I think, on set filming, and I get a message from someone that says, "Hey, I'm a believer. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm trying to, get my feet wet in the faith market, or and so if you have any opportunities, I'd love to be a part of it." And I'm like, well, you know what? We're filming a big party scene in about 2 days, and we could use some more people. So she came out. And little did I know what an extremely ridiculously talented actress she is, so hopefully there's opportunity for that character from the party to appear in future episodes, because she's very, very talented. And yeah, we did have her in a very small uncredited role.
I bet it's pretty difficult for you, Jarod, when you talk about the level of acting that you come into contact with, whether you actually have actors in a small role or a bigger role, but they're not in the key elements of the seasons. I bet it's difficult for you as far as delineating talent.
Oh, it's very tough. And that's probably, if there's any regrets about the series, is there's some people that were so good that I plugged into early episodes, just because I thought, hey, this may be our last episode, better get them in. And it's like, wow, I could have built an entire season around this person. They're that talented. So I guess that's the way it goes. But yeah, there's some people I wish that character wasn't dead, or I wish, we hadn't used that person in this role, because man, they could have been fabulous in other places.
Well, the thing what you're doing is you're so I guess we're called Vindies now, everybody. Yes. I like the term.
I've always called them Vindicators, but I think that Vindies works pretty good. So Vindicators or Vindies, either one.
Jarod, tell us a little bit how you got started into this filmmaking world.
Well, my start would be after my senior year of high school. I went to church camp that summer afterwards as still a student at the time. And one of the middle school kids had brought a video camera with him. And it was just sitting in the bunkhouse all throughout the day. So I thought, hey, you know what? I'm going to pick this thing up. I'm going to go film the recreation, the worship time, just whatever's going on here at camp. And for my graduation gift, I'd gotten a real nice laptop. And I thought, when I get back, I can edit this together. Really my first editing digitally. I can edit it together and we can show it to the church so they can see what went on with their teenagers at camp that week. And that was my first time to film something, edit it together, and have an audience to show it to. And then from there, it just, okay, what's the next project? What's the next project? And over the course of 15 years, I did those type of things until the opportunity came up for Vindication episode 1.
Now, Jarod, I know you're still in the process of completing season 2, but just do you have a rough idea of when the Vindies, us Vindies, can expect to see season 2?
Yeah, we'll be watching it in 2021 for sure. And as long as the way things are going right now, we're going to get the first 5 episodes early. And we'll get to watch the first 5 episodes of season 2. And then at a later date, once they're all ready to go, we'll see the back 5 of season 2. So as opposed to saying, hey, guess what? Season 2 will come out next December, or in 2022, as soon as those first 5 episodes are ready for the audience, they're going to get released. So you're going to have half the season to watch sooner rather than later.
Jared, do you have a prediction when we're just going to get back to normal, dude? When everything's over? We've all got these wild predictions, but I'm interested to know what your prediction would be.
Yeah, I'm sure if you listen to our predictions back in March and April, how foolish and silly they would sound. So I'm going to stay away from putting mine out on a recorded, shared platform of what my prediction is now. None of us know. We don't know.
We don't, Jared. One thing I do know is that, you know what? There's nothing new under the sun. And the only thing that's going to be a definite change is the return of Christ. That I know will be the game changer. Everything else that happens up until that time, it's time for an end will come. And everything will go right back to normal. Where people love this new normal stuff. I'm not a believer in it. I think that we're going to go back to normal and doing everything we were doing before. It's just a matter of time now. When, I don't know, but I certainly hope that we're almost done with it. Hopefully by the middle part of next year. My son Levi Smith, who's 13, has been a professional actor for 5 years. His reps never submit him for faith-based films. We would much rather do FBF over secular film. What's the best way to find auditions for Vindication, Jarod?
For Vindication specifically, you need to connect with Ronnie Hummel Casting and follow her because, well, she's the person who rallies the masses and gets auditions in for us on Vindication and has done a great job for us. So if you're not connected with her, you need to. We have a few other ways people can submit through submissions at vindicationseries.com is another place where we collect them. But there's a lot in there. There's a whole lot of people that have submitted. So whenever we go to cast, there's a lot of choices. So yeah, get connected with Ronnie and follow her pages, and she'll certainly let you know when auditions open up.
I saw a interview you did with Macy McLean, who was I think it's Macy McLean Stanley, who's in episode 2. She did a phenomenal job as well. I wanted to point her out. She was actually quite awesome, and her acting was tremendous in episode 2, by the way. And she was and struck me because she's such a young person. I'm sure she's not the age that she was portraying in that episode, but I still thought for someone that young, she is so seasoned. How did you get Macy?
Yeah, I want to say that was a connection through Ben Davies, who was in episode 1. He and her were in a film together, and he and I, since we worked together, kind of built a friendship and relationship, stayed in contact. And I said, hey, this Macy, I just saw her and I'm Not Ashamed, and she is good. So I'm like, you ever get a chance, if we ever get a second episode, you got to connect me with her. So that personal connection really helps out. I think she was doing a live stream once, and he got in there and commented, hey, when are you going to do a film with Jarod O'Flaherty? And she what's that, huh? Ben, text me. I don't know what you're talking about, But just that introduction worked. And through that, Macy and I have stayed in contact. And she really just impressed me kind of at the top of the list of people I've worked with. One thing about her, I thought, we're bringing in Macy McLean. She's come from LA. She just did this film that's been in multiple countries. It was in theaters all over. What's she going to be like? And like on day 1, the day before, whatever, she's out like carrying water bottles for us and 12 packs of sodas and carrying chairs and doing all this kind of stuff, just helping out, and the most laid back, easygoing, helpful person. There's nobody that has done more than she did as far as just being easygoing and stuff. And she's very much the real deal as far as what you see on screen and who she puts out in the public of who she is.
And by the way, Ben Davies was phenomenal in episode 1. That was the first and last time we saw Ben in the season. But my gosh, dude, he was really good. And by the way, speaking of episode 1, was it episode 1 or 4 that was the original standalone?
Episode 1.
Okay, okay. I don't know why I thought so. What was the story or the backstory with episode 4? I think that was called. Oh my gosh, what was the title of episode 4, Jarod?
Gentleman.
The Gentleman. What's the backstory to that episode?
Wow. As far as storyline and what's going on with that, just the misperceptions of someone, the character that's being investigated in that episode is someone that maybe they have some social issues. Maybe it's, a diagnosis of autism or something along those lines. You don't really know, and we never define it, and we didn't want to. We all have people in our lives that you interact with, and you just know that God made them a little differently, loves them just the same, and they are many times a great, great gift and blessing to all of us. But you just recognize there's something a little bit different, and this person was being unfairly targeted in his community because of those differences. And so that was kind of the backstory there. And obviously we wanted to prove that this person that you thought was one way turns out to be the exact opposite of that. And it also brings out some of the prejudices of others that were around him that they had and should not have had. I have a sister who has cerebral palsy, and there were some things in that episode that I took from her. For example, the character where he's shredding paper as a job. You think he's doing something mischievous by shredding all these papers and what's going on. And it turns out, he was just doing it as a job, because it was something they trusted him with sensitive information. And that's something my sister with cerebral palsy that she does. Every time she comes to my house, Jared, you got any papers for me? And I'm like, okay. So I'll go get some old records and stuff, and she'll shred them up for us. So that's kind of a little backstory on that episode.
I had read an article about it, and I actually had so many things that I wanted to ask you. I've actually forgot because I think I originally felt or thought that was the standalone. But then I remember, no, episode 1 was the standalone, which was awesome. I mean, my gosh, dude, that was an amazing episode 1. But I was just wondering about 4, because there was an article that you had done a Q&A on right. Episode 4, The Gentleman. And there's a pastor in the background that's preaching who's a well-known guy, which I read you were talking about him, and I'd never heard of this person before, but someone that you were very impressed with.
Oh yeah. That's pretty special. Dave Busby was the guy's name. He was a evangelical pastor in the 90s, and I only in my life saw one VHS tape of one of his sermons. It was shown on a Sunday night at church one time in the youth group, and it so impacted me that his name came to mind when I was putting this episode together. Now, he passed away of a pretty severe illness a while back as well. So I'm thinking, what could I do to get some of this guy's sermon audio? So I reached out to his widow, I think on social media, or emailed her. Didn't think I would ever hear back, but she responded to me and said, "Hey, I would love for you to put anything of his you want in your episodes. You have full permission. I'm the owner of that material, and you have freedom to put that in." And so that's what you hear at the very beginning of episode 4. So really, really special thing to me that I got to do that and include it in the episode.
There's so much power in Vindication in the way that you have filmed it, the music that you use during episodes. It comes in at just the right moment to capture the emotion of the scene and where the storyline is going, particularly, and I can pick any episode, but I'll go to episode 1 since we were talking about it, where you have the 2 ladies involved here, and you split the screen, and you kind of just go to the music comes in, and you kind of like, just no words, just them kind of walking to their bedrooms. And that was one powerful moment in episode 1, dude. Amazing. Was that your idea?
Well, the music goes solely to Connor S. Watkins, our composer, who has composed every episode of that. He even did the 2 films that you mentioned earlier on. Actually, all 3 of them, he has been the composer. So it's just like we're glued together, he does it all. But yeah, that was in the script, to have the contrast between each of these ladies. One's going to pray, one's going to send seductive messages, and it's happening at the same time, Yeah. And I knew it was going to be in slow motion, and we sent it to Connor, and our composer, and it's funny because sometimes I'm like, "Hey dude, can you just like throw a couple of notes down and we'll just, we just need something under the surface." He doesn't do that. he has to compose an original piece of music for everything that he puts in. And that timing you mentioned is all him. I'll send him the episodes. He watches and goes, this is the moment. I'm going to bring this in, create this. But there's never a, hey, just throw some notes together, or hey, let's recycle this from the other episode. No, it's always, he wants something that fits down to the frame of what we're seeing on the screen with the music. And he's he's already done episode 1 of season 2. He's working on episode 2 of season 2 right now, writing the music for it. So that's where we're at in the process. But yeah, he does a great job of bringing out that emotion. We had a screening once, and my sister-in-law was there, and we showed episode 6 right before we had an intermission. That's the reverse traffic, has a very emotional moment at the end. And it's like that emotional moment happens, the credits roll, and we turned up the lights for intermission, and everyone's like wiping their eyes and like, why'd you have to turn the lights on right now? And my sister-in-law comes over and she's like, man, stinking Connor, he gets me every time. And that's the composer, because she knew it was his music that drew out that emotion. But I thought that was a funny moment.
Well, I mean, it's Holy Spirit led, and you can feel the deliberateness of the music in relation to the scene. You can feel it. The viewer can feel it. And so this gentleman affects the viewers so strongly in a lot of the episodes because it's cohesive. The music with what's happening on screen is so cohesive. And it's just spiritual, dude. I'm just telling you, it's spiritual, and the hard-hitting subject matter, to go along with all of it, because we're all dealing with darkness in our lives at some point or another, are, and will. And so the anybody can relate to it if it's beautifully done, and because that's how you get to the light, and that's what your show does, Jarod. Vindication brings out the beauty of what's happening in life as far as how to get out of darkness. And a lot of the episodes will bring me to tears, just about every one of them. And I just love the way that you guys have actually done the show. So many aspects of it, which are just perfect timing to me. The beginning of the show, when you have Vindication coming to the screen, that little short start, then Vindication comes up, then you start the episode. I mean, all of it is just really, really awesome stuff. So Venus says, I think I've texted Connor every time I've cried while watching Vindication. He's so good at what he does. Yes, the guy really is. I mean, Jarod, the Holy Ghost has this show going somewhere, man. I'm enjoying the ride, and I'm sure you're enjoying it more than anybody else, dude. You have something special going.
Appreciate that, man. And you have been such a proponent for the show. I mean, I've hopped onto your lives and watched, and the support that you have given, it helps, because there's no guarantee that this thing keeps going or what the future holds. But what you're doing, just in talking about it, promoting about it, being a supporter, we appreciate you and are thankful to have you.
Man, I'm signed, sealed, and delivered, dude. I'm on, man. I am all in. Dave Ebert. Jarod said he's a fan of the reverse traffic, another powerful. Oh yeah, that's a tear-jerking episode as well. But he's a comedic improvisationalist. Dave Jarod is, so he teaches this to women, and that have survived trafficking. So that one hits home for Dave. And a lot of the episodes are dealing with issues. Like I said, a lot of people on one level or another are going through that stuff. They have, or they're going to, this is, and that's what, in my opinion, faith-based films doesn't do enough of, is attacking the serious subject matter that's actually happening around. We're so afraid of stepping on toes and being offensive. Dude, if you read the Bible, a lot of the Bible is actually R-rated. Okay. A lot of the Bible,
or worse.
Hey, sometimes it's X-rated. So, I mean, we just got to be real here, dude. I mean, we have to have a point where we're not so afraid of offending that we're going to miss saving lost souls. So it's refreshing to see Vindication. Thank you so much for what you've done and what you're doing. And I'm going to keep you in prayer, Jarod. I love it.
Well, thanks. We know it's the team mostly. I'm kind of here trying to keep everything tied together, but the people we have, and you've named a lot of them, with Todd, Connor, Ron Gonzalez, Mike Gonzalez, that are two very, very critical components. Tammy Ricketts, a whole lot of others. These are the people that are behind the scenes that are making what you see look so good. I get to come on here and do a Facebook Live and talk about, oh man, this guy's really good. And I'm like, not really. It's these people around me that are doing the great work, and I'm just kind of trying to keep it all together and organized.
Well, keep being humble, Jarod, because God is blessing you tremendously, man. Just continue to, because you are very humble and you're very approachable, and I've always appreciated that about you in my time of interacting with you. I think you're a very humble, down-to-earth person. Keep being that way, and God will continue to bless you tremendously. You're on your way to something special.
I appreciate that.
That's for sure. Jarod, how can fans follow you on social media and keep up with the latest projects from Jarod O'Flaherty?
Well, we have an Instagram Vindication series. We also have a Facebook page. I'd say the Facebook page is the most active of all of those. If you follow me on Instagram, sometimes I post up there and I forget, oh, I probably should have posted this from Vindication. So sometimes you get to see things from Jarod that that don't go out on the official platform. So yeah, I'm on there as well. And we may migrate to some other places in the future. We'll see what happens with the series. But yeah, we do some stuff on social media. Right now it's been kind of quiet. Venus is probably about to see a comment pop up from her. She's always on me to post more stuff, but I'm like, Venus, it's strategic. It's tactical. We have a reason. There's stuff coming. There's big stuff coming. We don't want to spoil it all right now.
Right. Understandable stuff. I love it. Okay, we're going to be looking for season 2, which will be coming up during the year of 2021 at some point in time. Jarod, I know you don't have any, you can't nail that down, but we can definitely expect it in 2021. I'm certain of that. So excited about that. I'm so appreciative once again that you have graced the Maurice Brown Show to talk about Vindication, and God bless you, Jarod. May the peace of Jesus Christ be with you and your family, brother. Thanks again for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Jarod O'Flaherty.